I'm Noah, 27, and I've spent most of my adult life cleaning up my family's messes. Ever since I got my first job at 16, I've been the reliable one, the one who picks up the pieces when someone else drops the ball. My younger sister, Heather, 24 going on 15, is the exact opposite. Impulsive, entitled, constantly between jobs, and always somehow managing to fall upward, usually straight into my lap. I used to think that's just what families do, help each other, support each other. But over the last few years, I've started to realize that in my family, support is just code for we expect you to fix everything while we do nothing. The moment that finally opened my eyes happened about 8 months ago, right after I paid off the remaining balance on my parents' car loan. It wasn't my loan, of course. It was theirs. But when the repo guy showed up at their house and my mom called me sobbing about how they'd have no way to get to work, I transferred the $4,800 without thinking. Again, no thank yous. No intention of paying me back. Just, you're a lifesaver, honey, and the unspoken assumption that I'd do it again next time. The thing is, I used to live in the same house as my parents and Heather. We had one of those weird generational setups where they converted the basement into a unit for me. The problem was, there was no actual privacy. Heather would barge in constantly. I'd come home to find her wearing my clothes, eating my food, even using my laptop. Once while I was in the shower, and she didn't understand why that was a problem. We're family. Relax, she'd say. And Mom would just shrug like it was perfectly normal. For a while, I just tolerated it. Worked my IT job from home, paid for half the groceries, covered more than my share of the utilities, and swallowed my resentment like it was part of the rent. I tried to set boundaries. I really did. I added a lock to my door. Dad removed it in case of emergencies. I started labeling my food. Heather peeled the stickers off and left the empty containers in the fridge. Every complaint I brought up was met with, "Stop being dramatic," or, "It's just for now. She's going through a rough patch." Heather's been going through a rough patch since 2018. Eventually, I started looking for apartments. Quietly. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend, Eric, because I knew if word got out, my parents would either guilt trip me into staying or accidentally sabotage it. I'd seen it before. When I tried to move out a few years ago, they staged this huge family dinner where my dad talked about how he was losing his son, and my mom cried about how Heather needed a male role model to help her get her life on track. That dinner ended with me ripping up my lease application. But this time, I played it smart. I toured apartments during my lunch breaks. I handled paperwork on my encrypted work laptop. I got a P.O. box for mail correspondence. By the time I signed the lease, paid the deposit, and moved in, no one had a clue. My new place wasn't flashy, but it was mine. One bedroom, a small balcony, decent internet, silence. I bought myself a little leather armchair and set it by the window, where I'd sit every evening with a book and no interruptions. No Heather. No constant noise. No passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge about someone leaving crumbs again. I'd never felt more peaceful, and I still didn't tell them. I let them believe I was still coming home to the basement every night. I'd show up a few times a week, usually around dinner, with some vague excuse about working late or staying at a friend's. They never questioned it. Heather was too absorbed in whatever chaotic relationship or TikTok drama she was dealing with. My parents were too busy coordinating their latest financial crisis or asking me for just a little help this month. I was practically a ghost, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Then came the dinner. It was a Saturday night, mid-March. A family dinner, my mom called it, like we hadn't been pretending to be one for years. I agreed to come, mostly for appearances and maybe for the free food. When I arrived, they were already seated. Heather was on the couch in one of my old hoodies. I didn't even bother reacting anymore, and my dad had a beer in hand, flipping channels. The table was set for four. There was chicken, mashed potatoes, something pretending to be salad. We sat, we made small talk, and then, mid-bite, my mom smiled and dropped the bomb. "So," she said, in that overly cheerful voice she uses when she knows she's about to say something insane. "Heather's moving in with you next week." I didn't choke, didn't flinch, didn't blink. I just kept eating. Mashed potatoes. Bite. Chew. Swallow. "Isn't that great?" she continued, as if this were already a done deal. "She just needs a place to stay until she figures things out. Maybe a month, 2 max. You've got the space." Heather chimed in without looking up from her phone. I can take the bed. You don't mind the couch, right? No one had even asked me. They'd already decided. I sat there in stunned silence for a second, not because I was shocked. I'd seen it coming for years, but because of how brazen they were about it. No heads up, no discussion, just a decree. Like I was the family Airbnb. Like my life was theirs to arrange. Still chewing, I nodded slowly. Sure, I said. Sounds like a plan. They all looked relieved. Mom beamed. Dad raised his glass. Heather muttered something about needing to pack. No one noticed the slight smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Because while they were busy deciding how my life would change, again, they didn't realize I'd already changed it without them. They didn't know the address. Didn't know the lease wasn't under my name, but a company LLC I'd set up for freelance work. Didn't know I'd disconnected the utilities from my old room last week. They didn't know that the basement, by Monday, would be stripped clean, bed, dresser, desk, all gone, thanks to the movers I'd scheduled right after dinner. I finished my food, cleared my plate, kissed Mom on the cheek. Thanks for dinner, I said, and as I walked out the door, I heard Heather call out, Don't forget, I need your Wi-Fi password. I didn't answer. I got in my car, drove to my real home, and poured myself a drink on the balcony, watching the city lights flicker below. They had no idea. And the best part? I wasn't finished yet. The next morning, I woke up early, not out of anxiety or panic, but from pure habit. My body was used to Heather's door slamming, my dad's TV blaring news at full volume, and my mom clanging every pan in the kitchen like she was hosting a cooking show for ghosts. But in my apartment, silence. Just soft city hum, the occasional bark from a neighbor's corgi, and the click of my coffee machine coming to life. I opened my laptop, went to my project, Freedom folder, and double-checked every document. Lease agreement? Signed. Utility account transfers? Confirmed. Movers? En route. I'd even scheduled a cleaner to come in afterward to make sure there was nothing left behind that could be used as an excuse for anyone to claim the space was still mine. The place was being erased like I'd never lived there, just how I wanted it. Around 10:13 a.m., I got the first text from Mom. Mom, hey, do you have any food restrictions for next week? Want to get a few things in before Heather gets settled. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then locked my phone and went back to sipping my coffee. By noon, the movers were already sending me pictures. Everything from the basement had been packed, loaded, and removed. The key was left on the counter, just like I'd told them. A small part of me wondered what my mom would say when she walked down those steps and found the space empty. Would she assume I'd been robbed? That I'd gone off the deep end? Or would she, just for a second, realize I'd finally gotten tired of being the safety net? That thought made me smile more than it probably should have. Around 3 p.m., Heather texted me. What's the parking like near your place? Also, I'm bringing my cat, that cool. Her cat, the same one that clawed my desk chair, peed in my laundry basket once, and was somehow always recovering from something, which meant I had to be the one paying the vet bill. I hadn't even thought about the cat, and it didn't matter because they weren't coming. At 4:42 p.m., Eric, my best friend since college, called. Dude, he said the second I answered, why didn't you tell me you moved? I blinked. What? I just ran into your mom at the pharmacy. She said Heather's moving in with you tomorrow, and you've been so mature about it. I was like, wait, isn't Noah in that place near the art district? I sighed. Yeah, I am. Silence. Then laughter. So what are they moving into? An empty basement, I said, with no power, no heat, and no furniture. Eric burst out laughing again, and I didn't even bother stopping him. You are so petty. Not petty, I said calmly. Strategic. We hung up a few minutes later, after he begged me to let him know what happened next. I told him he'd be the first to know, right after I finished the next step. See, I knew my mom well. She wasn't the kind of person to wait around and let things unfold. She planned. She'd probably already picked out new curtains for Heather's room. She'd prepped for this like she was welcoming a royal guest. And when the basement turned out to be empty, she'd call me. But I wasn't going to pick up. Instead, I went into my email drafts and pulled up a message I'd written 3 weeks earlier. It had sat there untouched, waiting for the perfect moment. It was polite, professional, and cold. Hi, Mom and Dad. Just wanted to clarify that I won't be able to host anyone at my current residence. I've moved, and my new address is private. I'd prefer to keep it that way for the time being. Also, please stop offering my space without my consent. I'm no longer in a position to accommodate the family's needs, financially or otherwise. I hope Heather finds a solution that works for her. I trust she's capable of handling her own affairs by now. Best. Noah. I hit send. Then I took a long shower, ate dinner, and turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls. 12 from my mom, 9 from Heather, a few from a number I didn't recognize, probably my dad borrowing someone else's phone. I scrolled through the messages. The first few were confused, then annoyed, then angry. Mom texted, "Noah, why is the basement empty?" "Where are you?" Dad texted, "You better not be pulling some stunt." Heather texted, "This isn't funny. Where am I supposed to go?" And finally, Mom texted, "This is not how we raised you." That one made me laugh, because it was exactly how they raised me. To be silent, to be compliant, to take on more than my share and pretend like it didn't hurt. Only now, I wasn't playing along. I walked out onto my balcony with a cup of coffee and let the sun warm my face. No knocks on the door. No one barging into my space. Just quiet, peace, and the knowledge that for once, finally, I was in control. But then, just as I took another sip, my phone lit up again. Not a call this time. A voice message. From Heather. I hesitated. And then I hit play. Her voice came through my earbuds, tinny but sharp, the kind of tone you'd expect from someone who thought the world owed her something and was furious to find out it didn't. "Noah, what's happening? I showed up this morning with all my stuff, and the basement's empty." Mom was crying. "Dad's freaking out. They said you just left? And now you're ignoring everyone." She paused, like she expected that to sting. "You knew I was coming. You could have said something. You didn't have to make a whole scene. I told my friends I was moving in with you. I posted it. I tagged you. Do you know how embarrassing this is? I'm literally in the driveway with nowhere to go. Thanks a lot." Click. That was it. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't care, but because I did. Too much, for too long. If I responded, she'd twist it. If I explained, they'd guilt me. If I showed up, they'd cry. But silence. That was something they couldn't spin. And for once, I was okay with letting them sit in it. Still, I couldn't help picturing it. Heather, in her absurd pink suitcase with 3 broken wheels, standing in front of the house like a social media influencer who just realized she booked a Motel 6. My mom hovering behind her in her floral apron, completely thrown by the fact that someone in the family had dared to make a decision without her blessing. And my dad, probably pacing the living room, muttering about how I always overreact. They'd built this illusion for years, that I was just a fixed variable in their lives. Predictable, useful, always accessible. And now that I'd removed myself, the gears stopped turning. The machine jammed. I took a deep breath and glanced around my apartment. The walls were still bare. I hadn't even put up the shelves I bought. My desk chair creaked. The coffee table had a scratch from where I dropped my keys, and the kitchen faucet needed a tighter grip to stop the drip. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine, and it was quiet, and nobody knew the code to the building entrance. Until now. Because that evening, there was a knock at the front door. I froze. I wasn't expecting anyone. No deliveries. No friends visiting. I stood still, halfway through drying a plate, and just listened. 3 more knocks. Then a pause. Then a voice. "Noah, I know you're in there." Heather. I didn't move. Didn't speak. She hadn't buzzed from the intercom, which meant someone must have let her in. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe she waited for someone to exit and slipped in. Either way, she was outside my unit, standing on the other side of the door I hadn't even told her existed. "You can't ignore me forever," she said through the door. "This is your fault." There it was. That familiar Heather logic. That I had somehow created the mess she stepped into. That if I'd just stayed silent, compliant, and available, everything would be fine. A beat passed. "I just need a few months," she continued, her voice softening like she was auditioning for pity. "I'll get back on my feet. You've got your space. I'll stay out of your way, I promise. You owe me that much." I actually laughed. Quietly, bitterly. Owe her. The last time Heather had a job, she quit because her manager gave her a weird vibe. The last time she said she'd pay me back, she bought a $300 pair of shoes the next day. The last time she promised to stay out of my way, she streamed a karaoke video in the basement at 1:30 in the morning, while I had a client Zoom meeting at 8. I moved slowly to the door, stood just behind it, and spoke low enough that I knew she'd hear, but not enough to invite more noise. "Go home, Heather. There was a pause. Then, angry tapping on the door. Seriously? You're going to be this dramatic? After everything. After everything? I wanted to respond. I wanted to open the door, list every instance over the last 10 years where I dropped everything to pick up her slack, where I loaned money I never saw again, where I rearranged my entire life around her chaos. But I didn't, because she already knew. And if she didn't care. So I walked away, back to the kitchen, back to the plate I hadn't finished drying. I set it in the rack and sat on the armchair by the window, looking out as the sky turned orange. I don't know how long she stood out there. 15 minutes? An hour? I refused to check. I didn't need to, because I knew this wasn't over. And I also knew that whatever came next, I was ready. But then, 2 days later, the email came in. Not from Heather, from my mother. Subject line, "We need to talk." It's about the house. The subject line alone made my stomach twist, not out of fear, but from years of conditioning. I'd gotten used to "we need to talk" always being the start of some guilt-laced trap, some plea wrapped in passive-aggressive shame. I nearly deleted the email without reading it. But something told me not to. I clicked it. "Noah, I hope you're happy. Your sister is living out of her car. She says you slammed the door in her face and made her cry. Whether or not that's true, I don't even care anymore. I can't believe the person you've turned into. Your father and I are extremely disappointed. You could have handled this better. You could have helped her find her footing. But instead, you chose to act like a stranger. What kind of man turns his back on family like that? We gave you everything. A roof, food, support. This is how you repay us? By moving out in secret and humiliating your sister? After everything we've done for you? Now about the house, we can't afford to keep it. Your father lost 2 clients, and the bills are piling up. I'll just say it. We need help. The mortgage is 2 months behind. If we don't come up with $3,200 by the end of the week, the bank will start foreclosure proceedings. We were counting on you to step in like you always do. You're the only one who can fix this. Please, don't make us beg. Mom." I read it once, then again, and then a third time, because it was just so perfectly, infuriatingly them. No apologies. No ownership. Just blame, emotional blackmail, and a final desperate Hail Mary. Not because they cared about me, but because I'd been useful. And now, they needed their tool back. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I pulled out a dusty old spiral notebook I hadn't touched in years. Inside were 2 columns I'd started keeping after my therapist, back when I actually could afford one, suggested it. On the left, what I gave. On the right, what I got. The left was full. Rent contributions, loan payments, car repairs, vet bills, emotional labor, birthday gifts no one remembered to return, sacrifice time, skipped vacations, canceled dates. The right side? Almost empty. The last entry I'd made had been 2 years ago, and it simply said, "Silence when I was in the hospital." They hadn't even visited. Heather posted an Instagram story the night I was discharged, a photo of her nails with the caption, "Self-Care Saturday." That had been the same weekend I had a minor surgery and went home alone in a cab. I closed the notebook and opened a new email. I typed slowly, clearly, without heat, without apology. "Mom, I'm sorry you're in a difficult position, but I'm not going to bail anyone out this time. I understand that you're behind on the mortgage. I hope you can figure out a solution. There are financial counselors, programs, and plenty of resources that can help. You'll have to look into those yourselves. I've helped you over and over again, without thanks, without repayment, and without acknowledgement. I've reached a point in my life where I need to prioritize my own peace and future. This isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries. I am not a safety net. I'm not a wallet. I'm not a fallback plan. I'm your son, or I was, until you decided that being family only worked one way. If you sell the house, I hope you can use that money wisely. If you can't keep it, I hope the next home you build is one where everyone is treated with respect, including me. Wishing you all the best. Noah." I hit send, then immediately blocked both her email and my dad's, just in case. That same evening, I got one final text from Heather. "Heather, I hope you know what you've done. We're done with you." No punctuation, just raw, entitled rage. I stared at the words for a full minute. Then I opened my banking app and did something I'd been putting off for far too long. I shut down the shared emergency account I'd quietly set up years ago to help cover family expenses. I'd been contributing to it every month, just in case. It had a balance of $2,900, enough to stop foreclosure for another month. I withdrew every cent and closed the account. Then I donated half to a local shelter, one that specialized in helping young adults escape toxic family environments. I figured someone out there could use a fresh start more than Heather needed new fake lashes. The rest? I used it to book a solo trip. 7 days. Beachfront. No phones. No internet. Just silence. Just space. 3 weeks passed before I heard anything again. This time through Eric, who texted me a screenshot from Facebook. It was a photo of a U-Haul in front of my parents' house. The caption? Closing this chapter. On to the next. House with garden sparkles #new beginnings. No mention of me. No trace of acknowledgement. Just Heather in front of the truck, holding a Starbucks and flashing a forced smile like she'd orchestrated the move herself. According to Eric, they were moving in with a family friend. Probably some poor soul who hadn't yet learned what they were signing up for. But me? I was free. Completely, finally, undeniably free. My apartment was no longer a hiding place. It was home. My life was no longer quiet because I was retreating. It was quiet because I'd taken control. And my family? Well, they were still out there. Still scrambling. Still spinning the same stories. But without me. And for the first time in my life, that didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel alive.